So the leftists are just in a complete rage to protect the machine right now. Not a rage against the machine, but to protect it. Now, it actually kind of started as a complete meltdown, and now it's just become this defensive sort of rage. And I expect it to really last all year. We're in 2024. Now, frankly, can you actually blame them? I mean, they need to protect their government cash machine because that's what actually funds their appetite, their lifestyles, and of course it allows them to recycle some of that government cash into the pockets of the politicians who promise to keep feeding the machine with your taxpayer money, of course. Now, what has inspired their rage, their anger, and kind of their screams over the past few months in Washington State? Well, it was the wildly successful initiative drive by Let's Go Washington, sponsored by Brian Haywood, with, of course, a lot of help from other groups like Restore Washington, volunteer groups, and etc. And let's face it, nobody expected this effort to succeed this year. I mean, the left got caught a bit flat-footed at this point. In fact, in some ways, this shouldn't be that surprising because the insiders and the consultant class in the Republican establishment even, such as it is, they also had their doubts. And really, nobody was paying attention to the Let's Go Washington effort until they were well on the final stretch. I mean, one of the reasons for this, by the way, is just the kind of professional level, the Republican and the Democrat kind of lefty consultants, they really all tend to be friendly with each other, and they swap information. They kind of trade information like currency. So rarely does the leftist establishment really pay much attention to the conservative movement, and the Republican insiders are usually pretty clueless about the left. However, both sides just tend to keep tabs on the other side by just trading this information back and forth. So the leftist leadership was quite surprised by the Let's Go Washington effort because their sources on the Republican side of the aisle were generally dismissive of the Let's Go Washington's effort as well. So this caused them to downplay the signature drive operation to their contacts on the left, who promptly ignored it as well. I mean, they ignored it until somebody noticed the Public Disclosure Commission reports, which clearly showed that Brian Haywood, who I have interviewed this summer and who was the prime sponsor and funder of this effort, they ignored the Let's Go Washington effort until they noticed that Brian Haywood is actually writing bigger checks and had used some paid signature gathering teams to actually get enough signatures. Now, even after that, I suspect the left took a month or so to kind of wake up because the checks were still small as these types of signature gathering efforts actually go. And because the 11 signature effort had failed in 2022, we discuss that a lot on my channel here. The general consensus by the smart insider set was this is just this reduced 6 initiative effort would also fail. However, about 2 months ago in November, I believe that the left really went into full panic and meltdown mode. And we can already kind of see from recent filings with the Public Disclosure Commission that SEIU, for example, they wasted at least $250,000 trying to bribe or intimidate or stop signature gathering efforts. In fact, the Leftist Stranger newspaper wrote articles begging people not to sign the initiatives. The ACLU, Planned Parenthood, SEIU, the fused Washington folk, I mean, every Democrat organization in Washington State, they really all went into this emergency panic mode trying to shut down the signature drive effort. And if there's one thing these guys won't be, they're not going to be rebellious truth tellers. They won't be questioning authority or speaking truth to power. Nope, these guys, for the day of the left today, they're basically long gone where they're going to actually challenge authority. Most of the left just wants to hide the truth, they want to conceal how government really operates, and they want to silence all who dare rage against the machine of big government, of course. So the political and grifter class on the left are now in total defensive mode, and they really need to protect the machine of big government and all the taxes that government recycles to feed the political establishment through direct payouts, grants, contracts, and then other grifting operations. Now, let's face it, you really can't blame their panic because amongst these 6 initiatives, 4 of them alone stop about $2.3 billion from being extracted from the people of Washington State annually. And even for government, that much money greases a lot of palms, it bribes a lot of friends, and it funds a lot of grant grifting operations. For hundreds, if not thousands of insiders, they already spend that money, they've already spent it in their heads anyway, for themselves, their schemes, and their political influence. And then, of course, these darn initiatives now, they put it all at risk. So they are shifting from meltdown and panic mode into full rage mode as they organize now to protect government's basically this cash machine that they need. Now, I can't see how they don't shift at least $50 to $100 million in 2024, trying to keep their gravy train going and ensure that the fat stacks of cash Inslee and Ferguson have promised them kind of keep on rolling their way. The media companies are going to be basically attempting to stop the initiatives, and the statements they're making are already being drafted right now. But instead of just one initiative to defeat, they're going to have to try to defeat all 6 at one time. And these political insiders, they're openly annoyed and furious that they have to do it. I mean, how dare anyone even attempt to cut off their access to easy money? Now, by the way, a little review of the Let's Go Washington successful 2023 signature drive here. I had asked them for an update on exactly how many signatures per initiative they turned in. So keep in mind, they roughly need about 325,000 valid signatures per initiative to qualify for the ballot in 2024. So here's the numbers that they actually submitted, mostly last month in December. And I'll report these in the order in which they were submitted. They actually submitted the initiative to the Secretary of State's office. So first we have the repeal of the hidden gas tax. This is I-2117. Let's Go Washington submitted 472,570 signatures, which was 147,000 more than they actually needed. Now, this one will effectively cut the state's gas tax by 50 cents or so per gallon, and it's more importantly going to cut about $1.5 billion per year in completely wasted grant grifting cash kickbacks for political friends and then favors along the way. Now, Inslee and Ferguson are particularly pissed about this one. Inslee, because it appears he might have actually been attempting to fund his future post-governor employment, if not his kind of faux greenie legacy with his cash game. And then Ferguson, because he was actually planning to use it to fund his friends as well. Secondly, we had the Parental Notification Initiative, which is restoring parents as the primary stakeholders in their child's education and bringing just a little bit more transparency to an increasingly secretive and weird education and medical world right now. This is I-2081. Now, Let's Go Washington submitted 458,134 signatures, which was 133,000 more than they actually needed. Now, this doesn't change the world, but it is a good step down kind of a long road towards restoring at least just a little bit of sanity in the current failing system that we have in place today. This one actually seems to be driving the WEA Teachers Union real crazy right now, but I'm sure that there will be an alphabet soup of confused groups that are in opposition to this one as well. Thirdly, we had the Restoring Reasonable Police Pursuit Initiative. This is I-2113. The Let's Go Washington folks submitted 438,577 signatures, which was 113,000 more than they actually needed. This is another very popular effort to restore some local sanity in basically in police pursuit decisions, at least restore them to a local level, after the Democrat Party of Washington State appeared to have become the party that openly supports violent and destructive crime in the state. The current completely preventable crime wave sweeping the state is a direct result of the Democrats' defund the police movement and their effort to ensure criminals have a free and unobstructed opportunity to victimize just as many people as they possibly can. Now, again, this doesn't change the world, but it is a far more sane approach than any policy that the Democrats have been able to cobble together in their ivory towers in Olympia lately. Now, fourth and fifthly, and I'll combine these because they combined them when they turned them in, the initiatives to repeal the blatantly illegal capital gains tax, which was I-2109, and the No State Income Tax Initiative, which is I-2111. They were submitted right before Christmas. The Repeal the Capital Gains Tax Initiative had 437,472 signatures submitted, and the No Income Tax Initiative had 450,134 signatures submitted, which was respectively about 112,000 and then 125,000 more signatures than they needed on each. And now this one, again, is in direct response to the dishonest Supreme Court, Washington State Supreme Court, basically pretending that Washington State's capital gains tax isn't an income tax. Every other state and even the IRS and the Democrats' own insider emails indicate that it is, but this one, and then this is, of course, the 11th time now in the last 90 years, the state voters will need to reject this cash grab by the ever-rapacious and bloated greed of big government. Now, the final initiative, which is a pro-choice initiative for people who want to opt out of Washington State's long-term care payroll tax, that's I-2124, the Let's Go Washington folks submitted 427,776 signatures for this one. Now, that's actually 102,000 more signatures than they needed for this one to actually qualify for November's ballot. And this is the one that was originally intended as kind of a political kickback payoff for SEIU, the original this long-term care tax that they had opposed. It was such a flawed and corrupt and dishonest concept that even the Seattle Times editorial board called it out. Any private insurance entity that proposed this type of policy, they'd be in prison right now for fraud. But of course, this is just another day at the office in government, and so they can basically cobble together scams like this every legislative session. Now, by the way, this initiative doesn't actually kill the tax, but it does let people opt out of it. It kind of gives the average person a choice to opt out of kind of a crappy plan that provides almost no real benefit. Will be lost to many people who, of course, pay into it and will only reduce how much of their own money that they have to spend. Now, listen, the left is obviously going to defend all of these crappy policies that they enacted, and they are not going to support any of these initiatives. And it's not because they're good or effective policies. They just don't want the gravy train cut off for their grifting operations. And of course, their campaign recycling efforts. And really, there's nothing like recycling taxpayer dollars into your own political campaigns and then funding your friends with big fat checks. However, to the rest of us who, not just the people who signed over 2.6 million times to get these initiatives to the ballot in the first place, but to the rest of us who recognize that these are broken policies and they need to be fixed or canceled, to regular people just like us, these are really good ideas. However, the left will rage on, and they will continue to do their best to stop somebody from basically taking their cheese. I mean, so what happens now? Now, first, I'm hoping to be able to interview Brian Haywood again. Now that this effort has been successful, regular viewers of my channel will be aware that I've been a fan of this effort both in 2022 with the 11 initiatives that didn't succeed, and this year with the 6 successful initiatives. And I was able to actually do some short interviews with Brian Haywood, in both cases kind of in the summer. Now I'm hoping to see if I can organize an interview with him after the effort has clearly been successful, at least in getting it on the ballot. Now, as far as the process is concerned, as I'm producing this video right now, about 30 volunteers have signed up to observe the signatures and the validation process that's going on at the Secretary of State's office right now. This is actually on the other side of the political spectrum, of course. The left has also signed up a passel of observers from Planned Parenthood, the Democrat Party, SEIU, the ACLU, and other leftist organizations. So typically what happens is the Secretary of State, they're going to be doing their own page counts, signature counts, and then they take a 3% sample of all the signatures, and they verify that they're valid voters, not duplicates, and that the signatures match. Now, this will be the only time in modern state history where the left will actually care about signatures. However, based both on the fact that the Let's Go Washington people tell me that they've already scanned and validated these signatures before submission, they can't actually validate whether the signature matches, but they can make sure that they're actually on the voter roll and that they're not a duplicate. And then, of course, based on the fact that every one of them has more than 100,000 signatures than they actually need, it really looks nearly certain that these will be on the ballot in November. However, of course, the next stop before they go to the ballot in 11 months will be the Washington State Legislature, where the Republicans support these ideas and the Democrats largely oppose them. And this will mean that the Democrat legislature will largely ignore them, most likely, and that they'll end up on the ballot in November. There will be more to discuss about this very soon, and I'm sure there's going to be lots of drama in the meantime. However, the rage and drama by all the government grifters has just barely begun. We have to expect to see the tame media in Seattle and Tacoma, they'll of course oppose the initiatives. Expect the political insiders who want their cut of the taxpayer pie, they'll jump in and they'll oppose the initiatives. The hardcore leftist crews, of course, will be kind of foaming at the mouth in their frenzied effort to stop these initiatives. And I'd expect them to actually do and say just anything that they can to convince the voters to vote no. But nobody on the left wants to fix what's broken, of course. They want to break more of it, in fact, and they want to continue to build their own kickback cash machine. So they owe their political and their financial allegiance clearly to the political magical money machine, and they will do all of their raging to defend it, certainly not against it, which ultimately comes back to you and I and what we do in the meantime. Now, I spoke with a local candidate for city council out in Ocean Shores just recently, and she was a good reformer, and she wanted to address some problems that she saw in local government. She actually lost her race, even after hand recount, by 1 vote. Literally 1 vote. Now, I could find dozens of people who supported her efforts in Ocean Shores, but they didn't take the few minutes it takes to fill out a ballot and actually vote. I mean, their vote would have clearly counted, and it would have mattered. Fortunately, the city of Ocean Shores actually does have a new anti-corruption mayor, probably the first one in many years. However, his life would have been a lot easier if he had one more ally on that council. But somewhere in Ocean Shores, a handful, probably hundreds, but I can easily see just a handful of people who didn't bother to show up because they didn't think their vote counted. They didn't think it mattered, or they live in apathy or defeat before they even start their day. So if you care about freedom and liberty and reducing the bloated size of big government, you just have to engage. You can't whine and moan and stay home. We got to show up. We have to help make an impact. Just like these people who were gathering signatures, just like Brian Haywood organizing and then funding the Let's Go Washington project, just like all those people who signed the initiatives, and frankly, just like the millions of people who will need to show up and vote yes next November for all of them. We must show up to have an impact and to make a difference, because in the end, the future always belongs to those who show up.